Welcome everyone to today's lecture. My name is Libraries and this video is sponsored by Mahvio. Today we are going to talk about unmasking population health. As a health data scientist, you are already familiar with the basics of epidemiology and biostatistics. But today we are diving into advanced methods for the health data scientists. Specifically, we are going to tackle two major analytics frameworks, that is intersectionality and multi-level models, or you can say MLM. The core theme of today's session is unmasking. Often the standard statistical tools we use like simple averages or basic linear regression actually hides the reality of what is happening on the ground. By the end of this hour, you will understand how to build models that reveals the true complexity of population health rather than flattening it. Let's start by addressing what I call the myth of average. In public health, we constantly see headlines like the national average for disease X is dropping, but as a data scientist, we must understand that national averages are masking that obscure structural determinants. Think of it this way. If you have one person with a temperature of 104 degree and another with a temperature of 92 degree, for example, their average temperature is perfectly healthy, that is 98 degree. But in reality, both patients are in critical condition. If we rely solely on the mean or averages, we miss the margins where inequality thrives. A stable national metric often hides a local crisis. When you report on average, you must always ask yourself, who is being hidden by this number? The next is data scientist mandate. This brings us to our mandate. We are transitioning from reactive observation to proactive advocacy. Traditionally, the role of an observer was simply counting cases. You tally up how many people got sick and you report it. But with the unmasked data, we move to a different level. We do not just count cases, we identify mechanisms. Our strategic goal is to strip away the average to reveal who lives and who dies. By doing this, we become advocates who generate policy triggers. We do not just say 10% of the population is ill. We say this specific policy is failing this specific subgroup, and here is the mathematical proof. To identify those subgroups, we need to understand intersectionality and the and factor, you can say. People are not single variables, they are the sum of colliding identities. Traditional analysis isolates variables like gender or class. A basic model might ask, how does gender affect health? But intersectionality acknowledges the overlap. Look at the Venn diagram on the slide. We have gender, class, and location, where they all collide in a center. We find our risk zone. For example, being a woman carries health risk, being poor carries risk, living in a remote area carries risk. But being a poor rural woman is not just adding one plus. It creates a unique compound structure vulnerability that traditional models completely miss. Let's look at the mathematical problem of isolation. When building models, we have to ask, does variable A always equal variable A? Consider a wealthy female versus a low-income female. In a standard dataset, both are categorized simply as female, which is variable A. However, their health risk during an infection outbreaks are polar opposites. The wealthy female might have high resilience because she can work from home and afford private health care, and the low income female might be an essential work taking public transit, placing her at high risk. Treating women as a single data category raises the critical distinction. If you only control for gender, your model is essentially lying basically. Let's ground this in a case study regarding the rural women. Here we are visualizing the inequity gap. Look at this chart. representing vaccine uptake. Urban women might have 80% uptake rate, and rural women might have 60% uptake. Look at the rural women, they are down at 30. This massive drop is the inequity gap. Mathematically, this is variable A, gender and child care responsibilities, plus variable B, rural location and distance to clinics. That is equaling compound risk. A rural woman faces a double burden and resulting in significantly lower vaccine uptake. If you only ran a main effect regression without interaction terms, you would assume rural women are somewhere in the middle. The interaction terms reveals the true crisis. Now we move to the second major concept, that is multi-level intelligence. First we discussed the intersectionality and now it's multi-level intelligence. In health data science, you must remember that data is nested. People live in neighborhoods, sit in cities. As we discussed earlier, a stable national average can mask a local crisis because individual health is inextricably linked to the tired environmental layers. Think of it like nested folders on your computer. You have the city level, which provides the broad context, okay? Inside that is the neighborhood level, and inside that is the individual. You cannot accurately model the individual's health without accounting for the folder they live inside. This nesting is exactly why standard regression fails. It suffers from the flaw of independence. Standard ordinary least scarce or OLS regression assumes that every person is an independent role. It assumes that patient 1's health has nothing to do with patient 2's health. But real life doesn't work like this. Look at the image on the right. Reality shows clustered variance. Neighbors share air, they share the same hospitals, they share social vulnerability risk index, SVI scores. If you ignore this clustering and use standard regression, which violate the assumption of independence, which mathematically leads to false positive or type 1 error. So the question is, how do we fix that? For that we use multi-level models, or MLM partitions variance into distinct components, allow us to see how much risk come from the person versus the place. Look at the hierarchy. You can see at level 1, this one is the individual. This includes their personal biology, age, vaccine status and underlying condition. But above that we have level 2, this one, that is the context or neighborhood. What they say, this level holds variables that affects everyone in that cluster equally. Things like the local growth rate of a virus, clinic density or SVI scores or average income. MLM mathematically separates these levels so we can accurately measure the impact of the environment on the individuals. This brings us to fascinating concept when environments meets biology. In MLM or multi-level model, we call this the cross-level interaction. Let's look at the equity curve. You can see the dashed line is the ideal as clinical needs goes from low to high. The resources distributed should also grow from low to high. But the red line shows the mismatched resources actually drops off for those with the highest need. Why this happens? The answer is because of cross-level interaction. We have to ask, does living in a high poverty district, which is level 2 variable, okay, make having asthma, which is level 1 variable, more dangerous? The answer is yes. The environment actually modifies the effect of individual factors. Having asthma in a wealthy suburb with clean air and great hospitals is biologically and statistically different from having asthma next to industrial plant. So when we combine everything we have talked about today, we reach the gold standard, that is intersectional MLM. This is where your skill as a master's student really shine. We stop finding averages or means, and we start finding clusters of risk. By running multi-level models with the intersection, we identify specific intersectional groups where environment and identity collide to produce the highest morbidity. For example, your model might output a highly significant clusters identified lower income plus rural. This is not just an intersecting fact, it tells the Department of Health exactly where to send their mobile health clinics tomorrow. Let's look at a practical scenario. Here the District 9 anomaly, or finding the hidden growth. Look at this graph, mapping growth over time. Okay, the flat black line is the national average, which looks perfectly stable, and if you were a basic analyst you would report that everything is fine. And but the red line here shows the district 9 cluster, which is crisis speaking towards, that is spiking towards high, you can see. Okay, the national average says safe, but intersectional multi-level model reveals district 9 is in crisis. If we only looked at the mean, the average that hid the outbreak until it was too late. This is exactly how early outbreaks of disease are missed by a surveillance system that do not use cluster data. This leads us from math to mandate. When your MLM identifies a spike like District 9, a high growth rate in a vulnerable cluster is not just a statistic, it is a mathematical alarm bell. You take the data insight and you use it to create a policy trigger. That trigger when directly informs resource allocation. You are using basically advanced mathematics to literally shift funding, vaccines, or medical personnel to the exact intersectional cluster that needs the most. Because before the national average even registers a problem. The Health Data Scientist Toolkit. To summarize, let's review the Health Data Scientist Toolkit. When the question is which combination of identity creates the most risk, you use the framework of intersectionality, the tool you use to visualize this gap chart. When the question is how does the environment change individual risk, you use the multi-level model, the tool to visualize the structural inequality is equity curves. Keep this toolkit in mind when you design your thesis project or whatever. I want to leave you with the final directive here. Equity is not an accident, it is the result of rigorous, unmasked data science. Good intentions do not fix healthcare system. Highly specific, rigorous tested multi-level models do. And your job is to use this tool to ensure no subpopulation is raised by the mean. Thank you for your time.